All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping into a really provocative article with a title that definitely gets your attention: The Appalachian Guerrilla. It's an argument that really pushes the envelope on political debate, and we're going to break down exactly how it gets there.
Right out of the gate, the author puts it all on the table. This opening line immediately tells you this isn't about tweaking policies. Nope. This is about the very idea of power in America and who should wield it.
Okay, so how on earth do you get from today's political world to, advocating for a king? That's the big question, right? We're going to trace the breadcrumbs, follow the author's logic step by step to see how they build a case for something so extreme.
So the core idea here is that America is at a Rubicon moment, a point of no return. The author's arguing that the usual stuff, elections, debates, compromise, well, that's just not going to cut it anymore to fix what they see as a nation in a deep crisis.
And let's be really clear about this. This isn't some call for a temporary fix, like a strong leader for a short crisis. No, what's being argued for here is a permanent tearing down of the whole democratic system, specifically to make sure their political rivals can never win an election again.
All right, so this whole argument is built on three main pillars. Let's break them down. The first one, and it's probably the most charged, is the idea that immigration and demographic shifts are an existential threat to the country as we know it.
And to make this point, the author pulls out a pretty shocking statistic from the St. Louis Fed, that since 2020, 88% of all new jobs created in the U.S. have gone to immigrants. Now, for the author, that's not just a dry statistic. It's evidence, they claim, of a deliberate replacement.
And this is where the author's strategy gets really interesting. They go from this big national number right down to a really specific local story, a school in Philadelphia supposedly closing for the holiday of Diwali, to make their argument feel more real, to say, see, it's happening right in your backyard.
So according to the article, none of this is happening by accident. It's all laid out as a very intentional political game plan by their opponents, designed to reshape everything from the workforce to the voting booths. Okay, moving on, the author then links this whole demographic argument straight into the economy. This is the second pillar. The idea that the American economy is being hacked to help out corporate interests, but at the expense of native-born workers.
So the argument goes, this isn't just the free market doing its thing. It's a supposed partnership, right? Politicians needing votes, corporations wanting cheap labor, and they're all allegedly working together to keep wages down and stock prices up.
And they get really specific here, pointing to things like ITIN loans. The argument is that these financial tools give immigrants an edge in the housing market, and the end result, they argue, is a system where native-born citizens just can't compete.
Then they bring in this data on H-1B loans to make an even bigger point, that these economic situations aren't just happening on their own. They're the result of actual policies that the author believes a strong leader could and should just get rid of.
And they don't stop there. They add more fuel to this economic fire with a few more claims, like most STEM grads not even working in their fields, and powerful business groups fighting to keep the flow of foreign labor coming. It's all meant to paint a picture of a system that's just fundamentally broken, completely rigged.
And that brings us to the third and final pillar of this argument, and this is where the author really zooms out to the big picture. The idea is, if the demographic and economic issues are the symptoms, then the disease is in America's most basic core systems.
Yeah, this quote really sums it up. The author basically thinks the country's entire economic operating system is just wrong, outdated, and not built for what's needed today.
This skepticism even bleeds over into energy policy. They look at fracking and say it doesn't make money. They look at renewables and say they're unreliable, basically calling both of them dead ends on the road to real energy independence.
And this data is supposed to be the proof, right? That these popular ideas for energy independence, well, according to the author, they're just a fantasy, offering a quick fix that doesn't last.
And then they connect all of this to a much bigger problem, a global environmental crisis. The point being, these problems are all tangled together. They're huge, and you can't just fix them with a few new laws. So, after laying out this really grim picture of failure on all fronts, demographic, economic, systemic, the author circles right back to where we began, to that one single radical solution.
So here's the entire argument in a nutshell. The problem? A displaced population. The system? Totally broken. Can't fix it. The solution? You need a leader who can just ignore the system and get things done.
I mean, wow, the imagery here is so powerful and so violent. It's a call for a complete and total break from what America has always said it stands for.
And you gotta understand, this is the crucial part. In this way of thinking, getting rid of democratic rules isn't a side effect. It's the whole point. Being able to act without anyone stopping you, that's what's presented as the only way this solution actually works.
And then the article ends with this absolute bombshell of a statement. A call to make democracy a dirty word again. I mean, that's a direct assault on basically all modern political thinking, suggesting we should go back to a much older, more authoritarian way of looking at things.
So look, whether you think this author is right or completely wrong, their argument makes us face a really tough question. What does it mean for a society when people start to see democracy itself as the problem, not the solution? It's a pretty heavy thought to end on, but definitely one worth chewing on.